Welcome to the world! Lucian Schaefer was born on January 25th, 2019. He was 4 weeks premature and slightly underweight for his gestational age. While he was kept for a brief period of time in the neonatal unit of the hospital to treat neonatal jaundice, a condition related to excess bilirubin in the blood shortly after birth requiring medical intervention, and to monitor self-thermoregulation, a concern for premature infants, Lucian was born without complication and was soon able to come home. Lucian was breastfed and we developed a close bond early. Other than some digestive sensitivities, he was a relatively normal newborn. Within his first year of life, he remained physically healthy, though sometimes fussy with meals, and reached all appropriate cognitive and physical milestones. Based on Thomas and Chess's classic temperamental categories, he was considered to be a difficult child due to strong emotional reactions and difficulty soothing back down, and his difficulty in transitioning to new people and situations. However, he was a curious child and was increasingly interested in his surroundings. Lucian remained a shy and reserved toddler, though he showed intense interest in the surrounding world with me as his safety line. He often liked to perform little experiments, like building a pile of dirt and pouring water onto it to see the effect, both in the home and outside. As he moved through toddlerhood, he became more comfortable exploring his world farther afield, though still within his sphere of safety, me at the center. Early and consistently, my partner and I placed boundaries on what was acceptable or unacceptable behavior, to which he responded reasonably well. As he became more mobile, he was given reasonable freedom for play and exploration to promote a healthy level of physical activity and development. I also opted to be not hands-off, but within reach when it came to solving problems, to encourage cognitive development, encourage patience and perseverance, and discourage over-reliance on me. As is normal for a toddler, he experienced separation anxiety when left with a sitter that he knew and liked, but he was able to calm down. He was a very emotionally intense child, and care was taken to address overstimulation and to work on methods of calmly explaining and discussing difficulties. I often talked to Lucian using normal language and encouraged book reading, or rather book looking in his case, early. I also encouraged pursuits of his interest. When he began talking, he never seemed to stop. Reviewing a developmental assessment at 19 months, he was above average in language development and spatial skills. He was average for his age group in gross motor skills and was age appropriate in his ability to concentrate. He was not seen to be aggressive, though he remained shy and would sometimes lose his cool if something didn't go his way. As a preschooler, Lucian remained a very inquisitive child about the natural world. However, he retained reserve and some difficulty coping with new situations. I worked to continue to expand his rapidly growing brain through reading and activities like trips to the zoo and small at-home science experiments. To help combat apprehension towards new people and situations, my partner and I worked to bring him slowly into more and more contact with different people, such as through playdates. Surprise! When Lucian was 2 years old, I became pregnant with a second child, leading to baby talks. Explanations were given and were developmentally appropriate. At 3 years old, Lucian entered preschool. He also became a big brother to a little girl named Vivian. With the birth of his sister, he seemed to vacillate between being excited to play the role of big brother, as well as needing more attention from his parents, which is a normal reaction to big changes in a child's life. At age 3, Lucian began to show an interest in music, which I reinforced. He also began to show an interest in more organized physical activities such as soccer and baseball. In an assessment prior to entering kindergarten, Lucian showed high aptitude for his age in literary comprehension, was average for his age for phonetics, and above average in vocabulary. He had an age-appropriate skill in counting, classifying, and understanding quantitative relationships. He showed increased ease in working in groups with other children, had made friends, and was interested in pre-math activities. As he matured, he became more involved at home with chores and being a good big brother. Entering grade school at age 6, Lucian became more interested in peer relations and enjoyed greater ease with other people. At this age, he also began showing an increased interest and aptitude for music and was enrolled in private piano and voice lessons, at which he excelled. Other hobbies he developed were soccer and baseball. Comments from his first grade report card were that he demonstrated strength in reading and writing, speaking and listening, in content knowledge of social studies and science, and in spatial understanding and visual arts. He continued to have difficulty with strong emotions, but found it easier to calm down. He was found to be developmentally appropriate in the areas of mathematical problem solving, understanding of data, and number concepts. He acted appropriately in different settings, such as recess or quiet period. It was noted that he worked well in groups but seemed to prefer working independently. At age 8, Lucian began to take violin lessons, continuing his interest in music, showed an interest in drawing, and settled on baseball as his preferred sport. He continued to enjoy reading, often reading well above his grade level. He did decently in math, but preferred science, especially hands-on experiments. At home, he was very helpful around the house, though he did have to be reminded of his chores and expectations on occasion. He remained a good big brother to Vivian. By the end of 7th grade, Lucian continued his ability to work well in groups and was strong in reading, spelling, and writing skills. He got all A's in the gifted and talented English Social Studies core course and in Spanish. The teacher commented that Lucian was becoming very good at analyzing literature and was quite a good writer as well. Though not his favorite subjects, he made B's in math and science. As for the arts, he excelled in drawing and in band. He was lauded as a model student, though he did have occasional difficulties with turning things in on time. While the adolescent years can be tumultuous for parents and their children, Lucian and I remained relatively close and open. I recognized that this was a potentially difficult transition phase, as he was trying to figure out who he was, his changing body, and his impending adulthood as he got older. However, while he was allowed more freedoms, he still had clear expectations of behavior and stayed out of serious trouble. He was heavily encouraged to explore his own developing worldview and take responsibility for his duties, such as schoolwork and chores, though Mom was there to help if needed. Hobbies included art, specifically drawing, bike riding, playing the violin. He became the lead violinist in his school orchestra, and being active in community service. Academically, he did very well throughout high school in all his subjects, getting all A's consistently, and was well liked by his teachers. He aced his SATs and ACTs. At the end of his senior year, he was accepted into several, some of them very selective, colleges. Socially, he got along well with adults, friends, and classmates alike, other than one instance of a fist fight over a girl. While sometimes moody, he was very emotionally balanced and felt comfortable talking through his emotions when he had processed them. At one point when he was younger, Lucian mentioned that I was nicer to him than other parents are to their kids, but that I also had more rules. My parenting style would fall under the category of authoritative parenting. Key points of this style of parenting are being firm, having clear, consistent limits, and being strict, but also being emotionally supportive to their children. Authoritative parents give clear explanations that are developmentally appropriate and give rationale for any punishments. Early in Lucian's life, I began setting consistent limits on expected behavior, but did not fall back on the "because I said so" response when disciplining my child. I tried to use these times of punishment also as teachable moments, especially in his adolescent period. For example, instead of just punishing Lucian after a bout of underage drinking, I included in the punishment praise that he had called me to come pick him up rather than trying to drive home intoxicated, and discuss the serious consequences, and not just the home consequences, of underage drinking. I tried to be very involved with my child as he grew and to encourage his interest through activities and trips, as well as with arranging private lessons for music when he became older. I also tried to make less interesting subjects, such as science and math in his case, more fun to supplement learning. However, I was not a helicopter parent and did purposefully let him struggle reasonably when trying to solve puzzles or complete homework. When stepping in, I did not immediately solve the problem, but acted more as a guide to facilitate independence and self-reliance while still being available and supportive. I read to him when he was younger and encouraged his reading to continue when he was old enough to do so. When he went off to college, I believe he went as a well-rounded young adult with a clear sense of self. In reflection, my chosen parenting style was very similar to my own parents, who encouraged and facilitated my different interests growing up, had firm and consistent expectations of my behavior, and gave explanations for the way things were. My mom read to me every night that I can remember growing up. The biggest difference, I think, in my parenting came from being more emotionally available and understanding in my child. While he did not have any evidence of psychiatric disorders, I was sensitive to maintain emotional wellness, an aspect where my parents could often be harsh. I can remember clearly being called a drama queen on many occasions when I was upset. It's interesting, even through a simulation, that my child was a lot like me. He and I both shared a shy and more reserved nature. I remember stories of my tendency to scream bloody murder when I was left at daycare, which Lucian also shared, though once he got us talking, it was hard to get us to stop. I remember getting into trouble a lot in grade school for talking during class. Another thing we shared was a passion for books, which I believe, for myself, was facilitated by being immersed in literature, basically in utero, which I tried to recreate for Lucian. We both received high marks in literary comprehension and vocabulary. We both worked well in groups, once used to them, but preferred to work independently. We both turned out to be good students, but he shared my difficulty in grade school of getting projects turned in on time. I almost failed 6th grade, not because I didn't do the work, but because I didn't turn it in. This was because many of my friends received increased allowance for good grades and I didn't. My logic at the time was, why bother then? Though I still felt guilty if I didn't actually do the work. The most surprising similarity was an affinity for music and the arts. I began music lessons early and was in chorus throughout school. I was also very involved in theater. While the manifestations were different, music through instruments and art through drawing, it is very interesting to me that this was something that occurred during the simulation.